hidden billionaire exposed. How a simple job at 25 led to an incredible life-changing love. Jason was just a regular guy in a bustling Midwestern town, working as a mechanic by day and helping elderly neighbors by night. But beneath the grease-stained shirt and humble smiles lay a secret that could change everything, a hidden inheritance that would make him a billionaire. The whispers of his true identity hung over him like dark clouds, threatening to burst at any moment. Yet, he clung to the lessons from his single mother about hard work and loyalty. He wanted to carve his own path, away from the shadow of wealth. Jason was no stranger to life's struggles. Every day he welcomed the sound of buzzing engines, the smell of motor oil, and the satisfaction of a job well done. He poured his heart into fixing cars that were as worn out as some of the folks who owned them. One evening, while tightening a bolt on an old pickup, he glanced up to find Mr. Thompson from down the street smiling at him, gratitude etched in his wrinkles. Moments like that filled him with purpose, but nothing could prepare Jason for the storm that swept through town one fateful night. The winds howled, trees fell, and the roof of the old community center buckled under the weight of nature's fury. In the aftermath, the townsfolk stood amidst the wreckage, their faces painted with sadness and disbelief. The storm had ripped apart not just buildings, but the very fabric of their community. It was a scene of utter devastation, yet amid the overturned cars and shattered homes, Jason felt a spark ignite within him. Adrenaline coursing through his veins, he rallied his neighbors, reminding them of their strength, of their bond. "We rebuild together," he shouted, his voice cutting through the remnants of despair. The energy was electric, hope flickering in tired eyes. They began to comb through fallen branches and debris, hands working side by side. As the community came together, Jason encountered Emily, his childhood friend turned passionate community organizer. Their eyes locked, and for a moment, the chaos faded. The warmth between them reignited old feelings like embers stirring to life. When they worked together, laughter mingled with the sounds of shovels digging into dirt and hammers striking nails, but soon the storm's wreckage unearthed more than just broken roofs and fallen trees. It revealed a painful divide. Many families couldn't afford to rebuild, hadn't the safety nets that wealth could offer. Jason felt the weight of his secret. Could he really help without being true to himself? Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let us continue. The town hall meeting approached, a pivotal moment looming on the horizon. Whispers of Jason's true identity began to swirl, igniting both hope and resentment. He stood at the intersection of loyalty and love, the weight on his heart heavier with each passing day. Would revealing his tremendous wealth destroy everything he worked so hard to build? As he prepared to face his neighbors, standing before families he cared for deeply, he realized he was about to choose not just for himself but for the community he called home. Would he step into the light or retreat into the shadows? With his heart racing and uncertainty wrapping around him like a storm cloud, Jason stood on the edge of a life-altering decision, one that could reshape their town forever. Would he keep his secret, or finally embrace his truth? The answer hung in the air, as charged as the sky before another storm. The town hall was packed to the brim, a sea of faces turned towards Jason like flowers seeking sunlight. The tension hung thick. There was a heaviness in the air as old creaks echoed from the wooden floor, a stark reminder of the history that lived within those walls. Jason could feel every heart beating in sync with his own, an anxious melody that made every breath feel like a weight. He stood at the front, hands trembling slightly as they brushed against his worn work pants. Jason glanced at Emily, her eyes alive with determination, yet shadowed by uncertainty. She had always been the confident one, the catalyst of community spirit, but now her usual zeal was dimmed by doubt. Did she know his secret? Was she standing there because she believed in him, or was she waiting for him to reveal the truth that hovered in the background of their renewed bond? "Tonight, we come together as a community," the mayor began, his voice faltering but filled with the kind of sincerity Jason admired. "We have lost so much, but together, we can rebuild. Together, we can heal." Those words buzzed in the air, igniting the collective hope of the townsfolk. Each one of them held a piece of their fractured lives. Jason had spent every evening with these people while they worked through the aftermath of the storm. He knew their struggles personally. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw Mrs. Jenkins, her frail hands still clutching the scraps of her life, her home reduced to scattered boards. And there was Sam, a single dad without the means to fix his roof. Their pain was palpable, a reminder of the fragile fabric holding their lives together, yet as the meeting progressed, whispers of his hidden fortune ebbed and flowed like the wind outside. "He could help us," one voice rose. "Why doesn't he just share what he has?" Another chimed in, dripping with frustration. Each comment felt like a dagger, piercing through Jason's resolve. As they looked to him, waiting for answers, Jason's heart raced. They saw him as a potential savior, but what if the truth shattered their faith? Emily stepped aside, leaning in and voicing what he feared most. "You have to tell them, Jason. They need to know they're not alone." "But what if it changes everything?" he whispered back, desperation creeping into his voice. "What if it tears us apart? Or what if it brings us even closer?" She countered, eyes sparkling with unshed emotion. The mayor was looking at him now, expectant. "Jason, do you have something to share?" Time slowed as he opened his mouth, words clawing at his throat. He felt like a flame ready to be extinguished, yet somewhere inside, a flicker of courage ignited. He scanned the room, gazing into familiar faces for reassurance, faces of friends who had championed him through hardships. Just as he took a breath to speak, a commotion erupted at the back of the room. A man burst through the doors, soaked from the rain, heart pounding with urgency. "You need to listen," he shouted, eyes wild and desperate. Jason's heart dropped as the man approached him, each step heavy with foreboding. What news could possibly rise to clash with the moment he had finally gathered the courage for? "It's about the storm," the man panted, clearly frantic. "It was no accident. You won't believe what I found." Fear coiled around Jason's heart like a vice. What if the revelation wasn't just about the secrets he held but about the very future of his town? As the whispers erupted into chaos, Jason stood in the eye of this brewing storm, his truth overshadowed by a new, more urgent dilemma. What lay ahead now? Would he ever share his burdens, or would the past intertwine with the future in ways he never expected? The man, soaked to the bone, staggered closer, his ragged breath echoing off the wooden walls. The crowd's murmur turned into a clamor, voices overlapping, a mix of curiosity and dread. Jason tried to focus, but the pounding in his chest grew louder than the chaos surrounding him. "What do you mean it was no accident?" He forced the question out, needing to know if the storm had roots deeper than mere weather. The drenched figure paused for breath, his eyes darting to the crowd. "I found something near the river. Papers. Plans for a dam that were never approved." He moved closer, lowering his voice as if sharing a sacred secret. They wanted to divert water to a new development, and the storm it was planned to clear the land. Gasps rippled through the crowd like wildfire, and Jason felt the weight of their shock settle onto his shoulders. "But why?" a voice cried from the back, filled with incredulity. "Who would do this?" "I don't know yet," the man replied, his gaze intense. "But this town deserves to know the truth." Jason's mind raced. This was even more than he could have anticipated. Questions spun around his head like leaves in the wind. Was he simply meant to stand by and let this information tear apart the fragile hope they were trying to build? What if it was all true? What if he carried millions in secrets, but this pain tied to the storm was the real tragedy? "Everybody, listen." Jason's voice cut through the chaos, although it trembled. "We need to understand this. Every one of you has been affected, and you deserve to heal. But more than that, we need to uncover the truth together." Emily stepped closer, her fierce expression battling against the rising tide of confusion. "Jason, if there are documents, if there's proof, we can rally people. We can fight back." He looked at her, searching for assurance in those fierce eyes. "But what if they find out what I've been hiding? What if my truth ruins any chance of us uniting against this? Your hidden wealth, it doesn't define you." She shook her head. But remaining silent could cost us everything. They need reassurance, not secrets. The uproar quieted momentarily as all eyes turned back to the soaked man, who was now looking intently at Jason. "You're Jason, right? You've been helping everyone rebuild. They trust you." Jason felt the pressure of their expectations settle like a weight on his shoulders. Would he be a pillar of strength, or would the truth shatter the trust they had in him? A voice piped up from the crowd, shaky yet bold. "We can't just let this go. If there's someone behind the storm, we have to stand together." As their resolve bolstered, Jason felt his own hesitations start to melt away. Perhaps this was his moment to intertwine his truth with theirs. He gathered his breath, ready to finally reveal the storm brewing within himself as well. Just as he opened his mouth, the lights flickered, plunging the room into an eerie darkness. Gasps erupted as confusion set in once more. "Stay calm." The mayor's voice rang out, barely audible. "We'll get the lights back on." Jason's heart thundered. In this shadows, with uncertainty and fear swirling around him, could he still speak the truth? Would he risk exposing his hidden fortune amidst this brewing storm of betrayal? And then he heard it, a soft voice from the depths of the crowd, a melody of defiance and hope that flickered through the darkness. "Whatever it is, we'll face it together. That's what community means." His heart leapt. Perhaps they could uncover the truth about the storm and his secret together. But time was running out, and Jason had to choose whether to shield himself or stand up for what was right. What lay ahead was even more daunting than he'd imagined. Would they venture down this dark path together, uncovering layers of deception that threatened to shatter their trust? Would Jason find the courage he needed, or would the shadows consume him? The room remained cloaked in darkness for what felt like an eternity, a heavy silence settling over the crowd. Jason's pulse quickened, and he could feel the collective breath of unease hanging in the air. The uncertainty wrapped around him like a thick fog, making it difficult to think. The only thing grounding him was Emily's presence beside him, steadfast and resolute amid the shadows. "I can't stay quiet any longer," he finally whispered, still trembling with uncertainty. "If this storm was planned, we have to confront it." As if on cue, the lights flickered back to life, casting a warm glow over their faces once more. Jason took a deep breath, gathering his courage. The crowd's faces, a mosaic of fear, anger, and determination, urged him to continue. He stepped forward, the weight of their gazes anchoring him. "The man is right, we've been betrayed," he said, his voice gaining strength. "But right now, I'm just as much a part of this as you all are. I'm hiding something enough with the secrets." A voice called out from the back, urgency rising in the tone. "If we're going to fight this, we need to know everything." Jason swallowed hard, a lump forming in his throat. It was now or never. The tension in the room crackled like static, anticipation pulsing through the crowd. Before the storm, before everything changed. "I inherited money." The confession hung in the air, weighty and fragile, echoing as his voice quivered. "I didn't earn it. I thought, maybe if I stayed hidden, it wouldn't change how you all see me. I wanted to earn your trust without it." A wave of murmurs swept through the crowd, a mix of shock and confusion. Jason felt exposed, vulnerable, as if he was standing naked before them. But he also sensed that something shifted in the energy of the room, a shared understanding building among them. Emily stepped closer, her eyes fiercely locked on his. "You're still the same Jason we know. Your value isn't tied to the money, but to your heart and your willingness to stand with us." She turned her gaze back to the crowd. "Look what he's done for us. He fought every day to help us rebuild. That's what matters." At her words, the murmurs quieted, and Jason was reminded that vulnerability had its own strength. It allowed him to connect in ways he never anticipated. The truth was a vital thread weaving through the fabric of their community, and together, they were stronger. "We need a plan," the soaked man, who had brought the news of the dam, interjected, voice steady. "If there are documents, we have to rally. We can uncover whoever is behind this." Jason nodded, the resolve in the crowd igniting a fire within him. "Let us form a committee. We'll gather everyone with skills, researchers, lawyers, anyone who can help us. Let us expose the truth and defend our town. A wave of agreement surged through the crowd. People nodded, their determination turning into action. Jason felt a flicker of hope. With newfound energy, they began forming teams, each person stepping forward with ideas, resources, and strengths. The sense of community ignited a passion uncommon to Jason's life of isolation. But deep down, fear still lurked. If they unraveled the truth, who else would be affected? Would his past decisions land him in a deeper hole? Would they unite in strength, or would the shared secrets unravel the bond they had created? As discussions moved forward, he realized the path ahead would be fraught with challenges. They were entering a battle against forces perhaps greater than they imagined. Suddenly, in the midst of the excitement, Emily squeezed his hand, pulling him aside. Whatever happens, we'll face it together. I won't let go. Jason felt warmth spread through him, and he knew what lay ahead would not only change the community but also redefine what was possible for him. As they made their plans, he couldn't shake the feeling that the real storm was just beginning, and they were about to walk straight into its eye. The question loomed larger now. Would the truth bring them together, or would it tear them apart? The energy in the room was electric. Jason felt the collective hope swirl around him. It was both exhilarating and terrifying. As they began to organize, he watched individuals step forward, eyes bright with purpose. Each person seemed to emerge from the shadows of fear that had consumed them just moments ago. Their potential to fight ignited a fire that Jason hadn't expected to feel. All right, listen up. The soaked man called again, knocking on the table to regain focus. We're all on edge, but we've got to channel that into something constructive. There are people in our town with skills we need. Jane, you're a researcher. Can you gather information about the dam? And Mark, how about you rally the community and get us a list of contacts? As each name was called, it became clear how many were willing to step up. Jason was overwhelmed by the wave of determination and fellowship blossoming around him. It felt different from the isolation he had known. This was a community, a spirit, and he was honored to be part of it. Then, as those initial plans took shape, a swath of worry crept into Jason's mind. What if the people they were dealing with were dangerous? What if awakening the truth hurt people? He swallowed his anxiety and reminded himself of Emily's words. Together, they would face this. They had to believe they were stronger than whatever lay ahead. Emily continued to rally support. We'll create a network. Everyone here has something to offer, whether it's resources, time, or just their voices. Her voice soared above the crowd, her passion infectious. We can do this. The crowd erupted in murmurs of agreement, affirming a commitment to each other. Jason watched her, admiring how she made light pierce through their uncertainty, transforming apprehension into action. He couldn't help but smile, imagining what it would be like to walk side by side with her in this fight, layering hope upon hope. Hours passed as they strategized about the logistics, but as excitement built, Jason's heart raced with a growing unease. He could feel shadows of doubt creeping in. How would they handle retaliation? How far were they willing to go? Just then, Greg, an older resident with a weathered face that hinted at a lifetime of hard work, raised a hand, stilling the room. We are all talking about a fight here, but we must also think about our families and our safety. It's a risk. Are we ready for that? His words hung heavily in the air, dampening the moment like a sudden chill. Jason felt the mirth ripple in the crowd as some eyes fell, reflecting the same fears he had wrestled with. There was a biting truth. What if their quest for justice came at a cost? Before he could feel overwhelmed by those doubts, Emily's voice broke through again. This is what community is about, Greg. We have each other's backs. We'll protect one another, no matter what. Right? A chorus of yes rose in response, warming the room once more. Jason felt a surge of pride for this band of warriors willing to step into the unknown. Though the shadows loomed large, the brightness of camaraderie pushed them onward. As the meeting came to an end, Jason found himself standing beside Emily again, their fingers intertwined, solid against the uncertainty. Whatever happens, we stick together, he affirmed, determination bubbling within him. Just then, a noise outside caught their attention, a low rumble, almost foreboding. Jason's stomach twisted as he exchanged glances with Emily. What was that? He wondered aloud. Before she could answer, the lights flickered again, plunging them momentarily into darkness. A collective gasp filled the space as Jason suddenly sensed they were not alone in this fight. Something was on the horizon, something bigger than betrayal, and as they stood there, breathless and anxious, Jason couldn't help but wonder if the truth would emerge along with the storm or if shadows deeper than secrets awaited them. The room held its breath, a stillness hanging in the air, punctuated only by the distant rumblings that had somehow morphed from a mere noise into an ominous sign. Jason felt an electrical pulse jolting through him, as if the very walls recognized the weight of what was to come. Emily's grip on his hand tightened, her eyes wide, reflecting the flickering shadows that danced around them. Did you hear that? A voice quavered from somewhere behind them. It was one of the younger attendees, his brows furrowed with concern. Yes, Jason replied, his own voice steadying as he spoke. It was a moment to act, not to falter. We need to check it out. As the lights flickered back to life, an uneasy murmur swept through the crowd. Jason's heart raced as he turned to the group. Stay calm, he urged, though he wasn't sure whether his reassurance meant anything. Let us just see what it is. Gathering courage from one another, they moved as a unit, stepping towards the door. Moments later, Jason blinked against the sudden daylight, his senses on high alert. The community center was situated at the edge of town, bordering the woods that seemed to stretch endlessly, but it was the road that ran alongside it, a narrow, cracked asphalt ribbon that captured Jason's attention. A small group had congregated outside, their faces twisted with a mix of anxiety and anticipation. It took Jason a moment to bullet through the crowd to the front of the line. What he saw made his breath hitch. A truck, battered and rusty, occupied the road, its engine quietly humming like a predator lying in wait. Is it empty? Someone asked, leaning in towards the vehicle. No, someone's in there, Emily replied, her voice barely above a whisper. Jason turned to her, trying to read her expression, but all he saw was resolve mixed with apprehension. Before he could question further, the driver's door creaked open. A figure stepped out, cloaked in shadow but gradually becoming clearer. It was a man, tall and broad-shouldered, his clothes disheveled and dirt-smeared. Yet there was something almost familiar in his stance, a certain air about him. Who are you? Jason found himself asking, stepping forward cautiously. The man squinted into the light, his eyes searching the crowd that had gathered, lingering on Emily's familiar face. Then, the corners of his lips curled slightly. I think you already know me, he said, his voice gravelly and low, cutting through the imagination that spun wild in the cool breeze. I'm here for a reason. An electric hush fell over the crowd. Jason could sense the shift in energy, the way caution merged with curiosity. What reason? He pressed, his heart pounding in his chest. Your fight is my fight, the stranger declared, a challenge evident in his words. And it's time you knew the truth about what's been happening in this town. As the mystery hung thick in the air, Jason felt a shiver snake down his spine. Could this man hold the keys to their struggles? The very struggle that had stirred them from their roots into a fight? I promise you, there's so much more at stake. There's a reason you've all gathered here today, and it's not just about courage, it's about survival, he added, stepping closer, urgency marking each syllable. Jason's heart raced as he felt the pulse of the crowd spike with a mix of fear and hope. What secrets were entwined in the stranger's words? Was he a threat or the answer they sought? As the murmur grew, questions swirling like autumn leaves, Jason couldn't shake the feeling that this encounter would not only change their plan but could also redefine everything they thought they knew about their town and themselves, and with that realization settled heavy in his chest, he found himself thinking how far they had come, but also where they were headed. What awaited them in this real fight? The answer felt like it was just out of reach, hovering between shadows and light. Would they be prepared for the truth when it finally broke? Jason took a step back, letting the crowd's murmurs wash over him. The tension had shifted, no longer was it just about fear, but about curiosity. Emily stood beside him, her brow furrowed, wrestling with whatever thoughts raced through her mind. The man in front of them radiated a strange combination of authority and vulnerability, his gaze piercing into each of them as if peering through layers of resolve. "Who are you?" someone shouted from the back, breaking the spell of silence. The man turned, regarding the questioner with the same measured intensity. "I'm someone who knows your pain, your struggles, and I'm here to help," he said, the weight of his words settling into the air like a storm cloud ready to burst. "But you have to trust me." Trust. The crowd exchanged glances, skepticism rippling through the anxious faces. Every person gathered shared a narrative, a reason they felt drawn to fight. But to trust a stranger? That felt risky, even with desperation hanging in the balance. "What can you tell us that we don't already know?" Jason found himself asking, the bravery rising in him fueled by both impatience and hope. The man chuckled, though it didn't reach his eyes. "You think you know everything, don't you? But the truth runs deeper than the surface. There's a network, a web of connections and deceit. Your town, it's not the secluded haven you think it is. Over the years, it has become a battleground." A soft gasp echoed in the crowd. Jason's heart drummed in his chest. Was this true? Could it be possible that the pain they had been fighting against was part of something bigger? Something sinister? His mind raced through the faces he recognized in the crowd. His friends. His neighbors. Could they all be unknowingly swept into a larger conflict? "Why now? Why tell us this?" Emily asked, her voice steady and brave. It cut through the rising tide of anxiety, forcing the man to meet her gaze. "Because you're at a tipping point," he replied. "Your town's fate hinges on the choices you make right now. There are forces at work that want to see it fall apart, to control it, and to exploit it." Jason could feel the weight of those words clinging to his skin. He glanced around the circle, every face reflected a mixture of skepticism and fear, but there was also a glimmer of possibility sparkling in their eyes. The fight wasn't over, perhaps it was just beginning. "I want to help, but you need to understand the risks. You will need to step outside of your comfort zone," the man said slowly, taking a deep breath. "It's going to get messy, and there will be sacrifices along the way. But together, you have the chance to take back what's rightfully yours." Around him, whispers turned into an urgent buzz, the sound of uncertainty and hope colliding. Jason felt the ground beneath him shift as adrenaline filled his veins. This was the moment they had been waiting for. They could either retreat back to their safe corners or fight for their home. "What's your name?" Jason asked, voice cutting through the chatter. The man hesitated, a flicker of uncertainty crossing his face. "Jake." "Just call me Jake," he replied, an earnest vulnerability slipping through his steely demeanor. "All right, Jake. If we're going to do this, then let's get moving," Jason declared, steeling himself for what lay ahead. He turned to the crowd, who had been listening intently. "Are you with us?" One by one, nods began to ripple through the crowd. It was a flicker of a flame igniting in the darkness. Suddenly, they weren't just a collection of individuals, they were a unit, a family united by a common cause, a desire to reclaim their lives. That spark of determination flickered into flame. Jason caught sight of Emily, her eyes alive with fire. He felt a surge of hope, yet an underlying fear yet nagged at him. The road ahead was unknown, and there was no telling what darkness lay waiting for them. What sacrifices would they have to make to confront the truth? What awaited them on the other side of the battle? And would they truly be ready to face the storm that was coming? The buzzing energy of the crowd invigorated Jason as he stood at the forefront, adrenaline pulsing within him like an electric current. Every heartbeat seemed to echo with the promise of a new beginning. As silence settled, Jake shifted, glancing around to gauge their readiness. "Gather close, everyone," Jake commanded, his voice earnest yet commanding. "We don't have time to waste. The clock is ticking, and everything hinges on our first move." Jason stepped closer to Emily, their shoulders brushing lightly, an unspoken connection forming between them. He could see the determination in her eyes, mirroring his own. "What should we do first?" he asked, his voice steady despite the tension in the air. "You need to gather information. Start small. Figure out who among you has been affected directly by these forces. Talk to your neighbors, lean on each other. Trust can be built through shared stories, Jake instructed, his gaze piercing but reassuring at the same time. Jason could feel the weight of responsibility settle upon him. This wasn't just about saving their home, it was personal now. With a sigh, he turned to face the crowd, a kaleidoscope of faces filled with fear, hope, and determination. Let us break into small groups. Find out what has happened to each of you. Your stories matter. Every detail counts. As people began to drift apart, the cacophony of voices filled the air, weaving together a tapestry of shared struggle. Jason and Emily formed a small group with Mark and Carla, two neighbors who had become good friends through their years living side by side. Let us start with what we know, Mark said, a slight tremor in his voice betraying his nerves. I lost my job last year at the factory. It was supposed to be secure, but then the cuts came. Carla chimed in, her frustration bubbling over. And they just keep pushing us out. It used to be a good place to work, but the new management? They don't care about us. They only want the profit. Jason felt the sting of their words. He glanced at Emily, who nodded, encouraging him to take charge. What about this network Jake talked about? He proposed. Have you noticed anything strange? Any connections between the company and others? They all exchanged glances, a collective understanding settling over them. The fear of speaking out against the unknown was palpable, but together, they felt fortified. Just last month, I heard from an old friend who works in corporate, Mark began cautiously. He mentioned discussions about a big merger, something that could change everything here. If they go through with it, we could be in real trouble. It could affect all of us. The mood shifted, tension thick in the air. Jason felt a fresh wave of urgency course through him. We need to find out more. If we know what's happening on the inside, we can fight back. Emily leaned in closer, her voice barely above a whisper. But how? We don't have any connections, we're just regular people. Jason's instincts kicked in. Jake said there's a web of connections. We'll start reaching out to more people. We'll expose their plans. As they shared ideas, plans began to form. A flicker of resilience ignited in Jason's heart, chased by fear of the confrontation ahead. The stakes were rising, and the shadows of uncertainty loomed larger with every idea exchanged, but amidst the heaviness, a thought flashed in Jason's mind. What if they were not just fighting for their town, but for something bigger, something that could truly change their lives? Whatever it takes, we stick together, Jason affirmed, looking around at the faces filled with hope and fear. We won't let them control us. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over their town, Jason felt the urgent pulse of something fracturing within him. The fight was just beginning. But lurking behind the questions and decisions was something larger than their predicament. What if the true reason for this battle wasn't just about saving their town, but also about uncovering the hidden truths within themselves? The storm was approaching, and deep down, Jason was ready to embrace whatever lay on the other side. What revelations awaited them in the shadows, just beyond their reach? As the last rays of sunlight faded, turning the sky a deep indigo, the atmosphere buzzed with a mix of anxiety and determination. Jason could feel the weight of the moment, and more importantly, the weight of his comrades' expectations. They stood on the brink of something monumental. All they had to do was step forward. Let us meet back here tonight. We need to compare notes and decide on our next steps, he said, issuing a call to arms more than a plan. The urgency in his voice carried, drawing nods and murmurs of agreement from the group. They dispersed gradually, their faces reflecting a blend of hope and the lingering shadows of uncertainty. Jason and Emily began walking together, a comforting silence forming as they navigated through the dimming streets. Do you think we can really do this? Emily asked, breaking the quiet. Her eyes, lit by the streetlights, sparkled with both faith and fear. What if we uncover something dangerous? Jason paused, considering her words. We have to. Too much is at stake, he replied, trying to infuse conviction into his voice. We've seen what happens when people remain silent. If there's a way to make things better, we have to attempt it. Their path led them to a small coffee shop, still open and inviting. The aroma of brewing coffee wrapped around them like a warm blanket. They slipped inside, finding a cozy corner table. The chatter of other patrons faded into the background as they focused on each other. The warmth in the shop felt comforting, a contrast to the chill settling outside both in temperature and in the world waiting outside those doors. "What's our first step?" Emily asked, her brow furrowed with concentration. Jason fished his phone out of his pocket. "We'll use social media, start reaching out to people." He hesitated, then added, "But we need a solid story and narrative that pulls them in. We can't just say we're concerned about our jobs, no one will listen. We need to frame it as a community matter." Emily nodded vigorously. "That's smart. If we make it about the town, more people will be willing to rally around us." Just then, Carla walked in, her eyes widening as relief washed over her face upon spotting Jason and Emily. "I've been looking for you too. I overheard some things that might help." Jason leaned forward eagerly, motioning for her to sit. "What did you hear?" "They're tightening their grip on the local businesses. I spoke to a friend who has a bakery down the street. She mentioned these new policies that suddenly came into play," Carla explained, her voice lowering conspiratorially. "It feels like they're pushing out the smaller stores to clear the way for something bigger, a corporate chain." Jason's heart raced. This was it. They might have just discovered a crucial piece of the puzzle. What if we get them to share their stories too? If we build a coalition of affected businesses, we can amplify our voices. The idea sparked a fire within Emily, who grabbed Jason's hand instinctively. "Yes. We can create a campaign. Gather testimonials, make it visual, share it widely." Their excitement grew, joy mingling with tension, but there was still one lingering doubt. "But what if we threaten them?" Jason asked, suddenly aware of the risk involved. "What if they retaliate?" Emily squeezed his hand tighter. "We're already at risk. The choice is between silence or fighting back. If we let fear win, we might regret it forever." They left the coffee shop emboldened, their plans solidifying step by step. The adrenaline surged again, propelling them forward into the night. As they walked through the streets, shadows danced against the old brick buildings, but for Jason, hope replaced the fear. They were on the verge of something incredible, a chance to turn their lives around. Yet a nagging question lingered in the back of his mind: what if this fight revealed deeper truths? What if it tested not just their community but their bonds with one another? They approached the next corner where the streetlights flickered. The anticipation hung heavy in the air, but the spark of what lay ahead was even bigger. They were ready to take their first step into the unknown. The challenge was big, and the risk was real. But as Jason glanced at Emily, he saw something else, a reflection of courage within her eyes that mirrored his own. Together, they would face whatever came next. And as a shadow passed over them, Jason felt the urgency quicken in his chest. What would they uncover next in their fight for a brighter future? The town hall buzzed with a new energy, crackling like the air before a summer storm. Jason stood among his neighbors, each face a portrait of resolve and determination, their past struggles interwoven like threads in a rugged tapestry. They'd spent countless hours digging through dirt and debris, and now, they were ready to unearth the truth hiding in the shadows. The meeting began, and Jason stepped forward, heart pounding like a drum. "We're not just here to rebuild our homes," he declared, his voice steady despite the undercurrent of anxiety. "We're here to uncover the truth about what happened during the storm and who's really behind it." His words hung in the air, electrifying the crowd. "But we can't do it alone," he continued, locking eyes with Emily, whose unwavering support bolstered his courage. "We need each other's voices, each other's stories. Together, we're stronger." A ripple of agreement surged through the room like a wave crashing against the shore, each nod echoing confidence and unity. As he looked around, a sense of transformation washed over him. The tension from before was melting away, replaced by shared purpose. The fears they had about exposure and retaliation still loomed, but the fire of courage burned brightly in their hearts. Suddenly, a voice rang out from the back, older and cracked like weathered wood. "And what if they retaliate against us? It was Mrs. Jenkins, her hands trembling slightly as she clutched a worn shawl around her shoulders. Jason took a breath and stepped closer to the gathered crowd, his eyes sweeping over familiar faces, hardened by hardship yet adorned with hope. What if they do? We've already seen what has happened when we're silent. We've lost our homes, our jobs, even our sense of community. Fear can control us, but united, we can take back what has been lost. Emily's fierce eyes sparkled. Right. If they think they can divide us, they're wrong. Our town is built on connection and trust. We'll channel our fear into action, we'll gather every story and every piece of evidence. As they spoke, an idea took root within the crowd. A small business owner shared their story of rising costs and layoffs, while another spoke of a shuttered family diner replaced by corporate chains. Their voices combined into a powerful chorus, a growing wrath against the unseen enemies manipulating their lives. Jason felt a spark of realization flicker in his heart. This wasn't just about exposing deception. It was about healing, too. We'll create a platform, Jason announced, the excitement swelling in his chest. A website or a series of community meetings where we share our stories. They can't silence us if we're together. A clarion call sounded amongst them, resonating like the first notes of a song uniting a crowd. As the evening wore on, ideas flowed like water from a stream, unstoppable and clear. Jason, Emily, Carla, and Mark merged plans, their voices weaving a collective narrative that would reclaim their truth. With each story shared and embraced, stitches mended the seams of their community, too. Old animosities faded, the walls of fear dissolved into a promise of hope. They even played with the idea of a community event, a fundraiser to amplify their cause. Maybe a festival. Someone suggested, bright smiles blossoming like wildflowers among them. In that vibrant midst, Jason felt different. The weight of his secret began to lift, but those familiar shadows danced at the edges of his mind. Should he reveal his own story, his hidden wealth? Would that tarnish their burgeoning bond, or could it offer a lifeline to those truly in need? But standing there, surrounded by his neighbors forging connections, hope ignited his courage. They were all in this together, the spirit woven tightly. Maybe it was time to reveal his truth, not as a burden, but as part of their shared fight. As the night wore on, Jason stepped into the light. I have something to share, too. Something personal. He hesitated at first, vulnerability creeping into his voice. I inherited wealth that I kept hidden. But I realized it doesn't change who I am or why I'm here. Eyes widened, and whispers rippled through the crowd. But it can help us rebuild. Emily's voice cut through the uncertainty, grounding him. I want to use it to aid our fight, Jason stated, conviction fueling every word. I want to let my wealth define how we interact. I only want to amplify our collective voices and restore our home. As silence enveloped the crowd, understanding dawned in their eyes. They embraced his truth, their resolve multiplying. This was bigger than money, it was about belonging, trust, and transforming whispers into a unified roar. In that pinnacle moment, Jason saw transformed faces illuminated by hope. He was no longer just a mechanic hiding behind the shadows. He was part of something much greater, standing shoulder to shoulder with his community. When the meeting ended, there was laughter, joy, and the thrill of purpose in every exchange. Handshakes turned into fervent embraces. As the crowd dissipated like an exhale, warmth flooded Jason's chest, an overwhelming sense of belonging that felt like coming home. With Emily's hand firmly in his, he felt ready to face whatever storm lay ahead. They had come together, linked by hope, conviction, and hearts full of purpose. And as they stood under the vast, starry sky, the darkness of uncertainty melted away, replaced by the bright light of community and transformation. Let us go paint the town with our stories, Emily said, a radiant smile on her face. Together, we'll make it right. That night, with excitement coursing through their veins, they stepped into the future determined, united, and ready to reclaim their home. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and feelings about this incredible ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this life-changing transformation. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait not even one more second to share.